Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about negotiation models, strategies, and tactics. And some of the things that we'll be talking about today are negotiating sections or at the table, and critical elements of negotiation, information, time, power, ethics in negotiation, bargaining strategies, distributive bargaining, integrative bargaining, interest-based bargaining, reaching an agreement. So let's get started. Let's start talking about a model for negotiating sessions. And I don't want to call it easy because it is kind of complex, but you have to really be able to understand how to make an opening statement. It's about really understanding and being able to describe the big picture of the negotiations situation. You have to look at the past relationship between the parties, current issues to be presented during negotiations, as well as the major external factors and concerns of both parties that are going to be discussed. We have to talk about suggested ground rules, and so both parties need to be agreeing what those ground rules are going to be looking like, and then working with those, and that will help facilitate the process. You have to recognize who speaks for each party. Where will the negotiations take place? When will the sessions begin, and for how long? And what form of agreement is acceptable? And how will formal proposals be made and agreed upon? So if you don't start with those 5 W's, you probably aren't going to have the best session possible. Then you got to be able to list key issues that must be resolved to reach a settlement, and ask for a list of the other party's key issues too. So these issues are often economic in nature and involve wages, benefits, costs. However, non-economic issues such as seniority, grievance handling, subcontracting might all be a key issue in a particular negotiation. The first negotiation session is about presenting the proposals. You have to ask the other party to present their proposals first. And you have to really, really listen intently to determine if is it true, the genuine interests on the issues, and which underlie its opening positions on those issues. You have to utilize active listening tactics as the other party presents its case. It really is important to understand where they're coming from, and you have to be able to acknowledge what he or she is saying with reflective statements and an open mind questions such as why, and to be able to better understand the interests. So paraphrase back, dig deeper to show that you're really actively listening, because you really do need to understand their perspective. It really is in the best interest for everybody involved. And where possible, identify common interests which might easily be resolved. So the third step is to negotiate minor issues first. Get those out of the way. You have to identify minor issues that are really easier to resolve, and then from there try to build some momentum. Suggest logical trade-offs or packages of issues that provide some gains for both issues. Include throwaways. Think about things, issues that help build momentum and that provide you leverage to make a trade-off for issues of greater value. Don't just think about the small things. Think about things that you're willing to give up. And then frequently mention that both sides need to satisfy some interests and realize mutual gains to reach an agreement. Ask the other party to brainstorm new options together. So it really has to be a collaborative process. So when you are negotiating key issues, you have to think about the economic value, things like wages, health care. Frame each proposal with persuasive agreements and use relative norms when appropriate. When a distributive process is utilized, make the first offer to anchor the negotiation, or let the other party make the first offer to enable you to respond with an offer to create a favorable settlement range. And you're writing these things down along the way. Once the settlement range for an issue is established, make small incremental concessions that lead to your desired settlement value. So that really takes thinking about what you ultimately want, start high, and then being willing to recognize what you're willing to let go along the way. And only make large concessions if matched by the other party. Try never to counter your own proposal. So, when you are responding to proposals, always take time to evaluate a proposal. Rejecting immediately may signify a lack of sincerity on your part. And when rejecting a proposal, explain why it does not meet your interest. If time is available, ask to suspend negotiations to research data or information which may support your interests or question the other party's interests or clarify a fact in dispute. And you got a caucus, often to rethink your interests, evaluate the party's proposal, or simply regroup with your team. And never allow team members to express conflicting views at the table. Yeah, if you're coming to the table, no matter which side you're on, you have to be able to speak as a group. And avoid a possible impasse by suggesting that issues which appear to defy resolution be placed on the back burner until the end of the negotiations. In the closing stage, if you're going to facilitate the closing, in the ground rules, provide that issues agreed to during negotiations be signed off and dated and then removed from the table for further discussion. A written, signed, and dated agreement or contract is standard in collective bargaining negotiations, and one party can offer to prepare the first draft of all the signed off and agreed provisions, and the other party then proofreads the draft. You have to expect many of the key issues to be settled at the end in the last 10% of the negotiations, and that is the normal process. When it appears a deal is close, expect the other party to try to nickel and dime you, or which is called the nickel and dime tactic, to close the deal. Be prepared to walk away rather than a last-minute major concession just to achieve the over factor. Desire to get the process over with. After all issues are agreed upon, the union will offer it to its membership. So, let's talk a little bit about ethical and unethical bargaining tactics. So, some appropriate tactics are to gain information about the opponent by asking the associates and contacts. Things that are kind of marginal is making unrealistically high or low offers first. Inappropriate tactics are to misrepresent factual information to support one's own position. An appropriate tactic, making an unrealistically high opening demand is okay. You know, something that's seen as kind of marginal is leading the opponent to believe you are the only game in town when you're not. And an inappropriate tactic would be falsely threatening your opponent. You don't want to do that. You want to maintain a working relationship. So it's appropriate to hide your real bottom line. Go in high. Don't let them know what you're willing to give up along the way until it's done. It is appropriate it's okay to give a false impression that you aren't in any hurry in order to pressure your opponent. You know, you can do that. It is inappropriate to promise good things with no ability to deliver. And it is not appropriate to bypass your opponent's negotiator to undermine the opponent's confidence in that person. And then it's not appropriate to gain confidential information from your opponent. So let's talk about bargaining strategies. Collective bargaining generally involves one of two strategic approaches, distributive or integrative. And when considering which appropriate might be best for a given collective bargaining situation, a negotiator should review information, timing, and power, the specific issues to be negotiated, and consider the people involved. With distributive bargaining, a negotiation method researched as a win-lose situation in which resources are viewed as fixed and limited, and each side wants to maximize its share. This can best be explained by 5 key elements: target point, resistant point, initial offer, settlement range, and then settlement point. With distributive bargaining, there really are 3 key starting values: a desired outcome, a bottom line, and then your opening offer. And negotiators make opening offers with one of 3 types of anchors: either facts, an extreme offer, or precedent. And so you always have to consider each of these things: your initial offer, your target point, your resistant point, your settlement range. Then make sure that on a scale from 0 to 10 that you make your initial offer at like a 9.5. That gives you range to be able to negotiate things away. So some negotiation norms have to be considered. There are relational norms, fairness norms, reciprocity, and then good faith bargaining. And with each of these, there are these norms affect counteroffers. So with a relational norm, there's a desire to maintain a positive long-term relationship. And it's especially important in most labor management relationships. With fairness, equality, equity, need, and status quo always need to be considered. With reciprocity, this is you're responding with a counteroffer or an action with one or of equal value. For example, the union has increased its health insurance copay with an offer of $5, and then management responds with a $5 decrease in the proposed copay. Good faith bargaining, negotiators will honor and not retract an offer, meet the discussed issues, and then make sincere proposals, and then provide copies of any data or information used during negotiations to share sources of information. So it really needs to be a collaborative process. Let's talk about framing positions. This is about presenting an issue to the other side in negotiation in a way that is convincing and causes the other side to see the proposal in a different light. There are 4 types of frames, and they're applied usually to a grievance settlement. With framing, the goal of the union is to change management's context from a cost decision to an employee morale decision. With a focus frame, change management's context from a cost decision by focusing on the uniqueness of the grievance. With contrast frame, you're changing management's context from a single payment of $12,000 to a much smaller monthly stipend. And then a negative frame is about changing management's context from a winning to avoiding a loss. So, using frame questions, you have to ask why. You have to ask why not. You have to ask what if. And then you have to ask for advice. And as you probably can see, asking the right question changes perceptions of people. You're bringing people down the road to help them see things the way that you see things. And so asking people these questions, have them articulate things which might actually help you be able to understand what a win-win solution is. With integrative bargaining, both sides seek ways to integrate the interests of both sides to mutually agreeable options. The integrative negotiator generally strives to achieve 2 basic goals: to create as much value as possible for both sides, and to claim as much value as possible for their own interests. Some common differences between distributive and integrative bargaining techniques. So factor one is the number of issues. With distributive bargaining, usually consider one issue at a time. With integrative bargaining, several issues are negotiated. Common name. With distributive bargaining, it's win-lose. With integrative bargaining, it's win-win. General strategy. With distributive bargaining, they maximize the share of a fixed pie. And with integrative bargaining, they expand the pie by creating innovative solutions that meet some interests on both parties. With relationship of the parties, it's usually just one time, and with integrative bargaining, it's continuing and long term. Interests with distributive bargaining are kept hidden, and integrative bargaining, it's shared with the other party. Possible options, one express position for each issue. Many options create new options for maximum mutual gain. And with information, it's kept hidden. With distributed bargaining and with integrative bargaining, you're sharing with the other party and explaining why the positions and explaining their positions. So, principled negotiations. Emphasize positions versus interests. Separate people from the issues, and focus on objective criteria, and develop mutual gain options. The positions versus interests of union and management. With management, they want to change the work assignment clause of a contract and maintain management rights. The interest would be to reduce overtime and costs. With unions, the work assignment clause has a gain in a prior negotiation, and the interest is keeping employees from being disciplined or for failing to perform in temporary assignments. So essentially, you have to look at the steps in interest-based bargaining negotiation process, which are essentially identifying the issues, identifying each party's interests on the issues. Step 3, developing options. Step 4, evaluate options on 3 standards. Are they feasible, beneficial, and acceptable? And then step 5 is reaching a consensus and a solution. So there are some advantages of IBB, and in that it is improved communications, it uncovers additional ideas and thus superior solutions to problems, it uncovers new options, and means the critical why behind an interest or a proposal. Everything is coming out. Some disadvantages of IBB is it's time consuming. Negotiators may have difficulty transferring a proposed creative option into a practical concrete solution. And then the standards suggested by IBB negotiators are often not precise and are subjective, thus not easily agreed to by both parties. With a categorization method, this is an integrative negotiation method that includes an exchange of information, developing a common list of issues, agreeing on compatible issues, exchanging equal value issues, and resolving issues that are remaining using distributive bargaining. So the 5 steps of the categorization method of integrative bargaining or win-win bargaining are: step 1, exchanging information and identifying all of the issues that are going to be negotiated. Each side explains its interests and concerns on the issues. Step 2, developing a common list of all issues that were discussed by either side during the first step and seek to classify each issue as compatible or similar interest, exchange approximately equal value that may be traded, and distributed. Those issues that are not compatible cannot be traded and therefore whose value must be distributed. Step 3 is about reaching a final agreement on each of the compatible issues and removing them from further negotiation. Step 4 is trading or exchanging issues of approximate equal value. In some cases, several issues may be included in a single exchange. And then finally, step 5 is the resolution of any remaining issues, which often is accomplished through distributive bargaining on each separate issue. So, when you are at a point of crisis and you want to reach an agreement, negotiators must reach a decision. If an agreement cannot be reached, this may be the point of a crisis. So, in the closing stage, you have to know that an agreement is reachable and has been reached. And the people involved can become psychologically committed to that agreement. And so once it's on paper and fully agreed upon, both parties need to make sure that they're following through in a legal and ethical way as much as possible. Anyway, that in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, is negotiation models, strategies, and tactics. I hope that you have taken something away from this of value. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And more than anything else, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it.